The morning light poured gently through the glass walls of the Lemon residence, a vast mansion overlooking the Hudson River. Everything inside gleamed with precision: polished marble floors, immaculate chandeliers, and a silence that echoed discipline more than peace. Jorge Lemon, 51, billionaire investor and CEO of Lemon Holdings, sat at the long oak table finishing his black coffee. His schedule, as always, was a perfect equation: minutes accounted for, emotions subtracted, distractions divided out. He wasn't a cruel man, just distant. Decades of empire building had built walls higher than any of his skyscrapers. His assistants feared him, the board admired him. The media romanticized his self-made legend. But none of them knew that behind the stoic face and perfect suit lived a boy still searching for his brother. He never spoke of it publicly, but those close enough, very few, knew that when Jorge was 9, his 4-year-old brother Gabriel vanished from a Manhattan park. One moment he was chasing a red balloon, the next gone. No witnesses, no ransom, no closure. The police report had faded with time. The memory never had. To everyone else, Jorge Lemon became the symbol of success. But deep inside, he was a haunted man, building towers higher and higher, as if to reach a heaven that might give him answers. That morning, a new maid had started work in the mansion. Her name was Elena Ramirez, 28, recently hired through a church-run charity program. Her soft-spoken demeanor and tireless work ethic had impressed the staff manager, though Jorge hadn't paid her any attention. He rarely noticed anyone below the level of his boardroom table. Elena walked quietly through the West Wing, dusting the grand hallway that displayed portraits of the Lemon lineage, generations of businessmen, soldiers, and founders. The final frame, larger than the rest, showed a little boy with piercing blue eyes and a mischievous smile. The boy's innocence felt so alive that for a moment, Elena paused. Something tugged at her heart, a memory buried under years of routine and hardship. She stepped closer, hand trembling. Her breathing quickened. She whispered, barely audible, "That can't be." Her cloth dropped to the floor. The boy in the portrait, the same smile, the same light in his eyes, was Daniel, the little orphan she had grown up with in St. Anne's Orphanage in Newark, New Jersey. He used to sit by the window, sketching with broken crayons. He always told her, "One day my brother will find me." He promised. Elena pressed her hand to her chest. "Oh, dear God," she whispered. "It's him." She turned around abruptly and collided with Jorge Lemon himself. Her heart leapt into her throat. The force of his presence was intimidating even in silence. He frowned slightly, lowering his tablet. "Are you all right, Miss Ramirez?" Elena swallowed hard. "Sir, forgive me. It's just..." She pointed toward the portrait. "That boy, who is he?" Jorge blinked. "That's my brother, Gabriel. He disappeared 30 years ago." Elena stepped back, hands trembling. "Sir, I knew him." Jorge's brow furrowed. "What?" "I grew up with him," she said, voice shaking. "He was at St. Anne's Orphanage in Newark. He went by the name Daniel. He said his brother would find him one day." Jorge froze. The words hit him like a wave of electricity. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then he straightened. "That's impossible," he muttered. "The police searched every orphanage. There were no records." "I know," she whispered. "But I'm not mistaken, sir. I remember his voice, his drawings, the scar on his left eyebrow. He told me about his brother, Jorge. He said you played piano together." The coffee cup in his hand trembled slightly. "How old were you?" he asked. "6, she said softly. "He was 4. He used to cry at night and say his brother's name." For the first time in decades, Jorge Lemon felt something inside him fracture. He stared at the portrait. His world, so carefully controlled, suddenly tilted. That evening, he couldn't focus on work. The stock reports blurred before his eyes. He called off a meeting and sat in his study, staring at the same portrait Elena had pointed to. Could it be true? He remembered the search, the detectives, the endless interviews, his mother's screams echoing through their Manhattan apartment, his father's silence, the funeral without a coffin, the unhealed scar across the family's heart. He'd built everything since then, every company, every empire, to fill that void. And now, a maid had walked in and reopened the wound with one sentence. At 2 a.m. Jorge picked up his phone and called Charles Nolan, a retired detective who had worked the original case. Nolan, it's Lemon. A pause. Haven't heard that name in years. Still chasing ghosts, Jorge. Maybe, Jorge said. Or maybe I finally caught one. He explained what Elena had told him. Nolan listened in silence. When Jorge finished, the old detective sighed. 30 years is a long time, son. Files were lost. Orphanages closed. But he hesitated. If what she said is true, there's one person who might remember, Sister Agnes. She ran St. Anne's until the mid-2000s. I heard she's retired in Jersey City. Jorge exhaled. Get me her address. The next morning, Jorge called Elena to his office. She stood by the door, nervous. He looked at her with something between skepticism and curiosity. You're certain of what you saw? Yes, sir. I would never lie about something like this. He studied her for a long time. Then you'll come with me, sir? To St. Anne's, today. Her eyes widened. Yes, of course. The drive to Newark was silent. Jorge's black Bentley cut through the drizzle, passing faded storefronts and rusted bridges. Elena sat beside him, hands folded in her lap. Finally, he broke the silence. Why did you take a job as a maid? She hesitated. I lost my mother last year. Cleaning helped me keep busy. It's honest work. He nodded, staring ahead. Honest work, he repeated softly, as if the phrase itself reminded him of something sacred. They arrived at St. Anne's, now abandoned, its sign faded and windows broken. The smell of dust and decay filled the air. Elena walked ahead, memories flooding back. The dormitory hall, the cracked tiles, the echo of children's laughter that once filled the space. This is where we lived, she whispered. Where we prayed, where we cried. In the corner of the old classroom, she found a faint drawing carved into the wood. 2 stick figures holding hands under a piano. She traced it with her finger. Jorge's breath caught. It was identical to a drawing Gabriel had made when they were children, one he still kept in his desk drawer. He turned away, overwhelmed. A faint voice startled them from behind. Who's there? They turned to see a frail woman in a gray habit, Sister Agnes, walking slowly with a cane. Elena? She said softly. My goodness. I haven't seen you since you were a child. Elena rushed forward to hug her. Sister, it's me. We came because we're looking for someone. Jorge stepped closer. My name is Jorge Lehman. 30 years ago, my brother disappeared. She believes he was here. Sister Agnes' eyes softened. You mean the boy with the blue eyes? Jorge's chest tightened. You remember him? I do. We called him Daniel Hayes, sweet child. Came with forged documents, no known parents. He used to draw pictures of a piano in a big house. Jorge nearly dropped to his knees. Do you know what happened to him? The nun's expression darkened. When he was 6, a couple adopted him, wealthy people from Boston. A year later, there was an accident. Both parents died. The boy was placed back in state care under a different name. Jorge felt dizzy. Different name? I wish I remembered, Sister Agnes said softly. But there was something odd. A man came one day, claiming to be from social services. He took the records. We never saw him again. Elena looked at Jorge, eyes wide with realization. Someone erased him. Jorge clenched his fists. Then we'll find whoever did. As they left the orphanage, the sun broke through the clouds. Jorge stood outside for a long time, staring at the sky. "I spent my life making deals, Elena," he said quietly. "But this one I'll make with God." He turned to her, eyes resolute. "We're going to find my brother." That night, back in his mansion, Jorge entered his study. He placed 2 photos side by side, one of himself as a child and one of Gabriel. He looked up at the ceiling, voice trembling. "If you're still alive, I'm coming for you, brother." The piano in the corner, untouched for decades, gleamed faintly in the moonlight. He sat before it, pressed one key. A note echoed through the halls, fragile but alive. The first note of a song unfinished 30 years ago. The morning after visiting St. Anne's, Jorge Lemon didn't open his stock reports or step into the boardroom. He sat alone in the mansion's study, staring at the childhood sketch Sister Agnes had found, a crude drawing of 2 boys beside a piano. The memory wouldn't let him go. The way his brother used to giggle every time he missed a note. The way his mother said, "Don't play to be perfect, Jorge. Play to feel alive." For years he had lived by the opposite creed. He had built an empire on precision and silence. Now, one sentence from a housemaid had broken 30 years of that silence wide open. He picked up his phone and called Detective Jonah Miller, a private investigator who'd once handled corporate espionage cases for Lemon Holdings. "Miller," he said, voice steady but cold, "drop everything. I need you on something personal." "Personal as in, off the books personal?" "Yes," Jorge replied. "You'll be paid whatever it takes. I'm looking for a man who used to be a boy named Gabriel Lemon, but the world knew him as Daniel Hayes." Miller was quiet for a beat. "That's one hell of a start." By noon, Miller was in Jorge's office, his rough face illuminated by the blue glow of multiple screens. "I ran a trace," he said, pointing at a digital map. "The adoption files from St. Anne's are gone, just like the Nin said. But I did find a reference in a state archive. Someone filed an adoption transfer for a Daniel Hayes in 1998. Then again, under a new name, Michael Hayes, after a car accident in Boston. The foster parents died, and the boy went missing from the system." Jorge leaned forward. "Missing again?" Miller nodded. "Vanished. Paper trail ends there. But," he tapped a new screen, "I found sketches. Drawings registered at a small art gallery in Pennsylvania. The artist's name Daniel Hayes. No social security, no driver's license. Paid in cash." Elena, who had joined them quietly, gasped. "That's him, I know it." Miller studied her. "You sure?" "I'd know his drawings anywhere," she said softly. "He always drew children and pianos." Jorge's eyes hardened. "Then we're going there." They left that evening, the Bentley replaced by a modest SUV. Jorge had insisted on driving. The road stretched endlessly through the gray sprawl of New Jersey into the rural quiet of Pennsylvania. Elena watched him in silence. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire who owned skyscrapers, but a man trembling beneath control. At a diner halfway there, they stopped for coffee. Jorge sat staring at the rain through the window. "You ever wonder," he said quietly, "why God lets things get lost?" Elena stirred her coffee. "So we remember what it feels like to find them." He looked at her, surprised by the depth in her answer. She smiled faintly. "I grew up believing everything I lost was gone forever. My mother, my childhood, but maybe loss isn't absence. Maybe it's preparation." Jorge nodded slowly, the words sinking deep. They arrived at Bridgewater, PA, near midnight. A sleepy town of red brick and soft lamplight. Miller had arranged a meeting with a local woman who ran the art fair where Daniel's work had appeared. The next morning, they met her in a small coffee shop. Her name was Mrs. Coleman, a cheerful woman in her 60s with paint-stained fingers. "Daniel Hayes?" she repeated, thinking. "Oh yes, the quiet one. Sold paintings of children and families, sweet soul. Never talked much. Lived out by the river. Do you know if he's still here?" Jorge asked, heart pounding. Mrs. Coleman frowned. Haven't seen him in months. Said he was traveling. But he left this. She reached into her bag and handed them a small canvas unfinished. It showed two boys at a piano, one playing, one watching. The title written faintly in pencil, The Promise. Elena's hands trembled. It's him. Jorge swallowed hard, running his thumb over the brushstrokes. Did he say where he was going? Mrs. Coleman shook her head. Just that he was going home. They stepped outside. The wind carried the smell of rain and pine. Jorge stared at the canvas. Home, he whispered. But where? Elena looked at him. Maybe not a place. Maybe a memory. He turned toward her, eyes bright. The piano. What? There's only one piano that mattered to him, the one in our family's old house. Elena frowned. You mean the one you sold years ago? Yes, Jorge said. But the buyer kept it in New Haven. It's in a historical estate now. If he went looking for memories. Miller caught on immediately. You think he went there? I know he did. They drove through the night again, headlights slicing the darkness. Jorge barely spoke. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Elena prayed quietly beside him. By dawn, the mansion loomed ahead, an old colonial estate surrounded by mist. The caretaker, an elderly man, greeted them warily. Can I help you? Jorge showed him a photo. Have you seen this man? He might have been here recently. The caretaker adjusted his glasses. Yes, actually, came by a few weeks ago. Asked to see the piano. Said it belonged to his family once. Played for hours, cried the whole time. Jorge's throat tightened. Do you know where he went? The old man shook his head. Said he was heading west. Something about painting the sunrise. Elena touched Jorge's arm gently. We'll find him. We're closer than we've ever been. They returned to the car. Jorge sat in silence, eyes closed. Elena whispered, You should rest. He shook his head. I can't. Not until I see him. She studied him for a long moment. Do you believe God brought me to your house for this? Jorge looked at her, voice low. I used to believe in logic, not miracles. But now, I'm not sure I can tell the difference anymore. Over the next days, the trail deepened. Miller uncovered financial records, wire transfers made to D. Hayes from a community art foundation in Scranton. They funded mural projects for underprivileged children. They drove there next. At the foundation, a young volunteer confirmed, Yes, Daniel Hayes painted our orphanage mural last spring. He said he was painting for the children who never got found. Elena's voice broke. That's what he used to say when we were little. One day, I'll paint so everyone gets found. The volunteer smiled sadly. He's in Millbrook now running an art program for foster kids. Lives by the lake. Jorge's chest tightened with both hope and fear. Thank you, he said quietly. They arrived at Millbrook as the sun set, a small, tranquil town kissed by golden light. Children played by the water, laughter echoing through the trees. Elena leaned out the window, pointing. Look, near the lake stood a small wooden cabin covered in ivy. Outside, a man painted on a large canvas, back turned to them. Jorge stopped the car. His hands trembled as he opened the door. The air felt sacred. He walked slowly, every step heavier than the last. The man was humming softly as he painted an old lullaby, the same one their mother used to sing. Jorge's voice cracked as he whispered, Gabriel? The brush froze midair. The man turned. For a moment, time folded in on itself. Two pairs of blue eyes met, the same color, the same soul separated by 30 years of searching. The brush fell from the man's hand. His lips parted, voice trembling. Do I know you? Jorge's breath caught. It's me, he whispered. Jorge, your brother. But recognition didn't come easily. The man, Gabriel, Daniel, whoever he was, looked confused, clutching his head. I don't remember. Elena stepped forward gently. It's all right, Daniel. You don't have to remember yet. Jorge reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the old drawing Two Boys at a Piano. He held it out with shaking hands. "You drew this 30 years ago. You said we'd finish the song together." The man's eyes widened. He reached for the paper, fingers trembling. A tear rolled down his cheek. And then, faintly, he whispered, "I remember the music." Jorge covered his mouth, sobbing silently. The man stepped forward, unsteady, and before anyone could speak, they embraced tight, desperate, like trying to close a wound that had been open for too long. Alina looked away, wiping her own tears. The lake shimmered with sunset light, and somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. To her, it sounded like heaven applauding. That night, in the cabin, they sat together. Gabriel spoke haltingly, pieces of memory surfacing like fragments of dream scars. Fire, strangers' faces, the smell of old paint. He didn't remember everything, but he remembered love. And that was enough. Before leaving, Jorge whispered a prayer under his breath. "Thank you, Lord. You never stopped looking. You just used her to show me how." Alina smiled. "Miracles happen when pride stops pretending to be logic." He nodded, voice trembling. "Then I've been blind for too long." As they drove back toward New York, the world looked different, softer. Jorge glanced at the seat beside him, where Gabriel slept peacefully for the first time in decades. He whispered, "Welcome home, little brother." And from that moment on, the empire builder became something far rarer, a man restored. The city skyline shimmered under the morning haze when Jorge awoke. For the first time in years, his sleep had been shallow yet peaceful, haunted not by nightmares, but by the strange, radiant disbelief that his brother was real and alive. He could still see Gabriel's face from the night before, fragile but alive, framed by the light from the lake. That face had once been his shadow, his other half, and now it sat across from him again after 3 decades of silence. As he sat at the edge of his bed, Jorge realized that what he felt wasn't victory, it was grace. Something undeserved, unearned, something divine. Downstairs, the smell of coffee filled the cabin. Alina was already awake, making breakfast, humming softly, the same hymn she used to sing at St. Anne's. Gabriel was sitting by the window, sketching on a worn notepad. His hands moved with gentle uncertainty, like someone retracing the outlines of his own identity. When Jorge stepped in, Gabriel looked up and smiled faintly. "I couldn't sleep," he said softly. "Every time I close my eyes, I see flashes. My mother's face, you at the piano, the smell of cedar. But then it disappears." Jorge sat across from him. Memory comes back in fragments. The heart remembers before the mind does. Gabriel looked down at the paper. "I've painted hundreds of faces, but never hers. I think I was afraid of forgetting it wrong." Jorge nodded, voice low. "You didn't forget. You were just waiting to remember." Later that morning, Detective Miller arrived with a manila folder thick with printouts and photographs. "I've been busy," he said, setting it on the table. Inside were copies of forged adoption certificates, state forms, and handwritten notes. "Whoever took your brother didn't act alone," Miller explained. "There was an entire network, fake orphan transfers. Kids sold through back channels, mostly to wealthy families overseas. Gabriel here was one of them, but his file got tangled when his adoptive parents died. That's how he slipped through the cracks." Jorge clenched his jaw. "Who was behind it?" Miller flipped to a photo of a man in a suit, graying hair, sharp eyes. "Arthur Pierce. He worked for Child Services in the 90s. Signed dozens of these falsified files." Elena frowned. "Is he still alive?" "Very," Miller said. "He's running a private foundation now, in Boston. Ironically, one that advocates for orphaned youth." Jorge's expression hardened. "Then we pay him a visit." The drive to Boston was quiet. Gabriel rode in the back seat, sketching the skyline as they passed. Every so often, he'd ask questions about their parents, about the mansion, about the piano. Each answer filled another small gap in his memory. When they reached the city, they stopped in front of a sleek glass building with a polished sign, "The Pierce Foundation for Children." Inside, Arthur Pierce was everything Jorge expected: charming, calculated, and soullessly polite. "Lemon," he said with a smooth smile, shaking his hand. "An honor to finally meet the legend himself. What can I do for you?" Jorge didn't smile back. "I'm not here for business. I'm here for the truth." Pierce raised an eyebrow. "About?" Jorge laid a photo on his desk, Gabriel's childhood picture from the orphanage. The man's expression faltered for half a second before recovering. "I'm afraid I don't know." "Don't lie," Jorge interrupted, voice low and sharp. "I have your signature on falsified documents. You sold children, didn't you?" Pierce leaned back, trying to laugh it off. "That was decades ago. Paperwork errors. The system was a mess." Jorge slammed his fist on the desk. "You stole my brother." The sound echoed across the glass walls. Pierce flinched, then sighed, dropping the act. "You have no proof it was deliberate. The files were destroyed. Nobody cares anymore." "That's where you're wrong," Jorge said, standing tall. "God cares." Pierce froze. Jorge continued, his voice calm but filled with conviction. "You think you buried truth under paper. But truth doesn't rot. It waits. And one day, it walks into your office wearing the face of the boy you erased." He gestured toward the door, and Gabriel stepped in. Pierce's eyes widened. For the first time, his arrogance cracked. "Do you remember him?" Jorge asked quietly. "Because he remembers you." Gabriel's voice trembled. "You told me I'd never see my family again. You said I wasn't wanted." Pierce swallowed. I only did what I was told." "The state wanted less publicity." "No," Jorge interrupted. "You did it for money." Silence fell. Finally, Pierce slumped back in his chair. "You're wasting your time. The system covered for me. It always does." Jorge turned to Miller. "Record everything." Then to Pierce, he said softly, "Maybe the system forgives you, but heaven won't until you repent." He walked out, leaving Pierce trembling in the silence of his own guilt. Back in the car, Jorge exhaled shakily. "I should have destroyed him." Alina shook her head. "You didn't need to. The truth already did." Gabriel sat quietly in the back seat, watching the city lights blur past. "I don't hate him," he said softly. "He was just lost. Like I was." Jorge glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You really forgive him?" Gabriel smiled faintly. "I have to. If I don't, I stay his prisoner." Elena met Jorge's eyes. "Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It releases it." They returned to New York the next day. Gabriel moved into the guest suite of the Lemon Mansion, a home he barely remembered but somehow felt safe in. Every night, Jorge would find him in the music room, sitting at the piano, playing the melody of their childhood. It was broken, uncertain, but beautiful. One night, Jorge joined him. He sat beside his brother, his fingers trembling as they touched the keys. Gabriel smiled. "Still remember?" Jorge chuckled. "Barely." Together they played, haltingly at first, then stronger, their notes intertwining like the years that had separated them. When the song ended, Jorge felt tears burning his eyes. Gabriel looked at him. "You know, I always thought God forgot me. But maybe he was just waiting until you could find me yourself." Jorge swallowed hard. "I stopped believing a long time ago. Then maybe he used me to remind you, over the next few weeks." Gabriel's memory returned in waves. He remembered the orphanage, the accident, even flashes of his adoptive parents' laughter. But what he remembered most vividly was Alana's voice. "She used to sing to me when I had nightmares," he said one afternoon. "She told me God was still listening, even when nobody else was." Jorge smiled at her. "Then maybe he sent you to both of us." Elena blushed slightly, turning away. "I'm just grateful I could help." "No," Jorge said gently. "You didn't help. You healed. One Sunday morning, Jorge took them both to church, the first time he'd stepped inside one in over 20 years. The choir sang softly as light filtered through stained glass, coloring the pews in warm reds and golds. When the pastor began to speak about the prodigal son, Jorge's chest tightened. The words felt written for them. He was lost, and now he is found. He looked at Gabriel, who bowed his head in prayer, tears streaming down his face. And for the first time, Jorge Lemon, the man who had once believed money could rebuild anything, whispered his own prayer, not for profit or revenge, but for peace. After the service, as they stepped outside, reporters were waiting. Word had leaked that the billionaire philanthropist had reunited with a long-lost brother. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. Jorge shielded Gabriel gently. "No interviews," he said quietly. "Some stories belong to the soul, not the press." He guided his brother into the car, ignoring the cameras. As they drove away, Gabriel turned to him. "What will you do now?" Jorge smiled faintly. "I'm not sure. But maybe it's time to build something that doesn't make me richer. Just whole." That night, he sat at his desk, looking at a blank sheet of paper. He wrote, "The Margaret Foundation, for lost children found dedicated to those who were taken, forgotten, or erased, and to the God who never stopped seeking them." He placed the pen down, leaned back, and exhaled deeply. For once, the silence of the mansion didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like peace. A thin mist rolled over the Hudson River that morning, softening the skyline beyond the glass walls of the Lemon estate. The mansion, once cold and echoing, was now alive with quiet movement, the smell of coffee, the faint rustle of pages, and the muffled sound of laughter coming from the music room. It had been 6 months since Gabriel returned. 6 months since Jorge found what neither wealth nor power could ever buy back: his family. The piano in the corner, silent for 30 years, had become the heartbeat of the house again. And as Gabriel played, the melody reached every corridor, gentle, uncertain, alive. Elena paused at the doorway, holding a tray of breakfast she'd made herself, smiling as she watched the brothers together. Jorge sat beside Gabriel, reading the morning paper but not really seeing it, his eyes instead drawn to the music that filled the air like sunlight. When Gabriel finished, Jorge clapped softly. "You're getting better," he teased. Gabriel laughed. "Better? You mean less terrible?" Elena smiled. "I think it sounds like heaven." Jorge looked at her. "That's because it is," she blushed, setting down the tray. "Don't say that, sir." "Don't call me sir," Jorge replied gently. "Not anymore. Call me Jorge." There was a pause, then the three of them laughed, a sound so ordinary, yet so sacred, it felt like prayer. That afternoon, they attended the launch of the Margaret Foundation, named after Jorge and Gabriel's late mother. The event took place at a children's center in Brooklyn, walls freshly painted with vibrant murals, each one depicting a theme of restoration and hope. One mural showed a small boy holding the hand of an older brother in front of a piano, surrounded by rays of light. Beneath it, a plaque read, "For every child who is lost, may they be found, and may they forgive." Hundreds gathered, reporters, donors, volunteers, but Jorge felt strangely at peace. He wasn't there as a billionaire or a CEO. He was there as a man redeemed. When it was time to speak, he stood on stage with Gabriel and Elena beside him. The crowd quieted as he approached the microphone. "My mother used to tell me," Jorge began, his voice steady but warm, "that truth has the patience of God. It may take years, even decades, but one day it comes home." He glanced at Gabriel, whose eyes glistened with emotion. 30 years ago, my brother disappeared. For a long time, I thought God had forgotten us. But I've learned something since then. God doesn't lose people. We do. And then he sends someone like Elena to lead us back." The audience turned toward Elena, who looked humbled, her hands trembling slightly. "This foundation," Jorge continued, isn't about money. It's about mercy. It's about giving children the chance to be seen, to be loved, to be found, because somewhere out there, someone is still searching for them. He stepped back, voice soft. And sometimes, that someone is God himself. The room was silent for a moment, and then applause filled it, not thunderous, but reverent. A standing ovation not for wealth, but for grace. After the event, as the crowd dispersed, a young woman approached them with tears in her eyes. She held a small child by the hand. Amar, Lemon, she said hesitantly. My name is Clara. I grew up in the system too. When I heard your story, I wanted to thank you. I always thought I'd never be found, but hearing you today, I think maybe I still can be. Jorge smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. You already are. The child beside her looked up curiously at Gabriel. Are you the man who paints angels? Gabriel knelt down, smiling. Sometimes. But I think you see them better than I do. The boy grinned. My mom says I'm one. Gabriel chuckled softly. Then she's right. When they left, Jorge turned to his brother. She reminded me of you. Gabriel nodded. Maybe that's the point. God didn't just give us back what we lost. He gave us work to do. In the months that followed, the Margaret Foundation grew faster than any business Jorge had ever built. Not because of investors, but because of faith. They reopened orphanage records across 3 states. Dozens of missing children were identified, reunited, or given new names with dignity. And every week, Gabriel would paint portraits for each child found, their faces immortalized on the foundation's walls. Elena, appointed as its director, balanced compassion with fierce discipline, the quiet strength of a woman who had lived through loss and chosen hope anyway. People loved her. Some said she was the heart of the entire mission. Late one night, as the staff cleaned up after a fundraiser, Jorge lingered by the piano. Elena approached him quietly. You never play alone anymore, she said softly. He smiled. Because now, the song has more than one part. They stood in silence, listening to the wind outside. Finally, Jorge asked, do you ever wonder why God chose you to find him? Out of everyone? Elena's eyes glistened. Maybe because I'd been found too many times myself. Every time I lost something, he sent someone to remind me I wasn't invisible. Maybe he wanted me to do the same for you. Jorge looked at her with quiet reverence. Then thanked you for being his hands. Weeks later on a Sunday morning, Jorge woke early and walked to the music room. The golden sunrise spilled across the polished piano, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits in the air. Gabriel was already there, painting. Elena sat nearby, reading a devotional Bible. Without a word, Jorge sat at the piano. Gabriel looked up, smiled, and joined him. Together, they began to play the same melody they had once started as children, broken, unfinished, now complete. Elena closed her eyes, listening. The music filled the mansion, echoing through hallways that had once been empty. It was more than a song. It was a prayer answered. When the last note faded, the room felt holy. Jorge turned to his brother. You remember what Mom used to say? Gabriel nodded. Music is what heaven sounds like when it forgives. Jorge smiled through tears. Exactly. That evening, Jorge walked alone through the garden. The air smelled of rain and jasmine. He paused by the old oak tree his gardener had recently planted. Beneath it, a small bronze plaque read, For the years we thought were lost, and the God who was never late. He knelt down, touched the soil, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. When he rose, Elena stood behind him. You okay? She asked. He nodded, smiling faintly. For the first time in my life, yes. They walked back toward the house where Gabriel's laughter echoed faintly from inside. Jorge stopped for a moment, looking back at the sky, the same sky that had watched him lose everything and now, somehow, give it all back. He said quietly, I used to build empires out of fear. Now I build faith out of gratitude, Elena smiled. And faith lasts longer. Months later, the foundation's success drew global attention. Documentaries, awards, headlines. The billionaire who chose grace over gold. But Jorge rarely gave interviews. When he did, he spoke not about numbers, but about names. The names of children who had been found, the names of those still missing, and the one name that had changed everything, Gabriel. In one televised interview, the reporter asked, "Mr. Lemon, what's the greatest investment you ever made?" He smiled softly. "The day I decided to look for my brother. And what did you learn from that?" He paused, looking directly at the camera. That the best returns aren't measured in profit. They're measured in people. A year later, on the anniversary of their reunion, the three of them, Jorge, Gabriel, and Elena, returned to St. Anne's Orphanage. The building had been restored under the foundation's care, its once crumbling walls now filled with color and laughter again. Children played in the courtyard, painting, singing, chasing each other beneath the sun. Gabriel stood quietly in front of the chapel, holding a small painting. Two boys holding hands at a piano. Beneath the words, "The promise kept," Jorge joined him. "Looks familiar," Gabriel smiled. "We never finished it." I figured now was the time. He hung the painting on the wall inside the chapel, just above the altar. Light from the stained glass window spilled across it, making the boys' faces glow. Jorge's voice was low. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" Gabriel turned to him. "She already is. She's been watching the whole time." As they prepared to leave, a little girl ran up to Elena, holding a small piece of paper. "For you," she said shyly. Elena unfolded it. Inside was a drawing, three figures holding hands under a golden sun. "Who are they?" Elena asked. The girl smiled. "You three. You're the ones who make lost kids found." Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She crouched down and hugged the girl tightly. When she stood, Jorge and Gabriel were waiting by the car. The sun dipped low, painting the world in amber light. As they drove away, Elena looked back at the orphanage shrinking in the distance. "It's strange," she whispered, "how something that began with pain could end with so much beauty." Jorge smiled. "That's how God writes his best stories," Gabriel nodded. With broken pencils and perfect endings, that night, as stars appeared above the Hudson, the Lemon Mansion glowed softly in the dark. Music drifted from the open windows, the familiar melody of two brothers and one piano. And though the world outside still spun with noise, inside that house there was only peace, the kind born not from power, but from purpose. Because at last, the boy in the portrait wasn't lost anymore. He was home.